What's up, guys? Today we're going to be taking our aftermarket turn signal and taillight assembly and installing it on our Supermoto project. We're also going to be doing a lot of wiring to it today, and we are going to be installing it on a brand new Acerbis fender. We're going to have to modify both the fender and the taillight assembly, and hopefully we can make this work as clean as and reliably as possible. So let's get started. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is get this thing mounted up to our brand new rear fender. And in order to do that, we have little screws and spacers here. So I went ahead and picked up some plastic spacers and some little M3, M4 little button head cap screws here with some nuts and washers. We're going to try getting this to mount as flush as possible because we are going to be hydro dipping this, and there will be some holes in it. Just want to make sure that we get it all correct. All right, but first, I think the spacers are going to have to go right here on these two holes. I don't know if you're able to see that very well, but it's got like these little raised surfaces here, and those aren't tall enough to fit underneath the lip of the dirt bike fender. So, I'm gonna tape these puppies on there. And we're gonna go ahead and mount her up. That's actually looking pretty good. I think I might want to take a little bit extra off, but at the same time, what do you think? It looks pretty good. I like that. That's, you know, I want a little bit of a gap in there. All right, so good thing to do is get a scribe out. Ooh, the thing almost fell off. Put our scribe down so we don't poke ourselves. All right, now we're pretty much in the middle there. Scribe. Ah! All right. There we go. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to eyeball this as much as possible because I don't have any way of measuring it. Unless somebody else has a way of measuring it, and I'm sure I'll find that out in the comments. All right, first things first. We're going to go ahead and drill that bad boy out. Get a little drill set out. Beautiful. All right, so that little sucker, as you can see, that is the only profile we're gonna have. Just this little tiny button here. I like it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get our washers off of this guy. I just put them all on there so they wouldn't roll around. And pop this puppy out. As far as the new plastics go, you really don't got to worry about the scuffing of this nice shiny outside because we might have to sand it first anyways. I'm going to take our washer and stick it right there on top of this guy to minimize the likelihood of it pulling through if somebody grabs it or we fall off. I mean, one of the two. All right, there we go. Now I have some self-locking fasteners here. These have a little locking element inside of there. I don't know if you're able to see that. No. Whatever, you get the point. self-locking cap screws. I'm going to go ahead and take these bad boys off. Take our little Scrappy-Doo here. We just want to scribe the holes. And there we go. We have our other two holes there. Those are pretty lined up. And I'm going to take these guys. Alright, so now we have these little guys all taken care of. Go ahead and stick those guys on there. And double check for size. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Well, there we go. No gluing or any corner cutting here. If you decide to glue it, that's up to you, but I prefer to have a fastened system, because the last thing you want is something telling everybody around you that you're stopping to fall off, and then that's it. Let's get a little socket here. I really need to organize this. There we go. What is that? That's a 7. Go ahead and stick this bad boy in there. Actually, we don't need that. We have a little handle. It's so little wiggly, we didn't, our socket doesn't fit inside of that recess there. So we'll have to figure something else out. But in the meantime, I guess we'll get the rest of these all tightened up. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and mock this puppy up. It's kind of the same principle as measure twice, cut once. You always want to mock everything up before you make any permanent changes. Well, yeah. Oh, look at that. That looks pretty nice. What do you think? I mean, it's a little loose, but Once we tighten everything up, it'll pop in there and be ready to rock. Alright, so I would say that looks good. And the bike ain't moving anywhere anytime soon, so we're going to go ahead and take this off. We're going to take these bad boys off. Today's a new day, and I went ahead and made a taillight wire extension off camera. The taillight initially, the wires that came with it did not extend to the distance I needed in order to make the plug connection inside of the airbox. The bullet plugs that were on the end of the wire extension I made, they didn't really fit very well together, and I didn't like them, so I decided to redo the taillight extension wire using blade plugs and heat shrink. It was about this time when I noticed that I didn't like the plugs that came with the taillight assembly, so I decided to replace that as well. Here I'm grabbing the appropriate size heat shrink wrap that'll go over the end of the blade plug and the wire. new plugs installed, it's time to heat shrink them. Now that that's done, let's fit this up and see how well it works. What are you doing? This is when I realized that the bullet plugs that were on the end of my cable extension that went to the wiring harness were not the best of quality, and they didn't even want to plug in together. Now we're going to plug in the front brake switch to the wiring harness. We don't currently have an on-off switch installed, so I'm going to take that wire that goes for that switch and bypass the switch by plugging it into each other. Using a spare battery, I'm going to supply power to the wiring harness by connecting the battery wires to the battery. And as you can see, as soon as I plug the battery wires in, we immediately get a tail light. And now we have working brake lights. Yeah. Here I am marking a wire with a zip tie. I didn't have any green wires, so I had to use black. So I'm marking the green wire with a zip tie. Bringing the assembly back to the workbench so I can wire up the turn signal lights in the same fashion that I did the tail light. Taking note that the turn signal
ground wire shares the same ground on the wiring harness, so I'm going to go ahead and combine the two into one wire. Before I put another bullet plug on, I'm going to verify that it fits inside of the plug on the wiring harness. Alright, I think it's time to get this wire mess cleaned up. So using some small zip ties, I'm going to start connecting the wires into a bundle. It's a good idea to take all of your wire identification tags and transfer them to the ends of the new cable that you added on. Here I'm adding a portion of shrink wrap to the center of the wire bundle to serve as extra protection to go through the grommet when entering the airbox.
Okay.
Now I'm going to finish bundling the wire with zip ties. Alright, one last little check to make sure everything's in the right place. So using a 5/8 grommet, a blank grommet, because I plan on cutting an X in it to pass the wires through. Now, checking to make sure that your grommet fits snugly around the shrink wrap we installed earlier, we're going to make a 5/8 inch hole using this conical drill bit. It's got the size on there. I went ahead and marked it with some red Sharpies so I don't lose track of. Got to double tap it. I chose this location to drill the hole because it goes underneath of the seat and it provides direct access from the splash portion of the fender into the airbox. So this is where we're going to be installing our grommet, and our wires are going to be penetrating through there. So I'm just going to go ahead and mock this up and verify that the hole is in the correct location. And there it is. Now what you don't want to do is drill a hole right in the center here, because it is in a direct path of things fleeing off the rear tire. So just don't want to beat up your wires too bad. But right here provides direct access between the frame rail and over into the airbox without drilling the airbox. So I think that's the best route. And there you have it, a functioning, fully wired, and reliable taillight and turn signal assembly for a Supermoto.